When you think about the Black experience, but when you even break down furthermore the Black experience of a woman, when you add those intersections, the disparagement and those experiences are very different in corporate, in society. It's fact-based. So there are studies that talk about the pay gap, that talk about the microaggressions, that talk about hypervisibility and invisibility of the Black woman. And so it's all of these things that you're seeing at a heightened level, and we experience at a heightened level now, where Black women oftentimes can feel like they're walking on eggshells. You don't see us represented, in many places there. So when you come here and you see the representation and you can connect with the culture, you can be a part of that culture. There's nothing more liberating than that.
Hey YouTube fam, welcome back to another podcast episode at On the Deck with Throp. We have another fantastic guest here today to share with you another meaningful conversation with different people around the world who live here in Jamaica one way or another, or in today's case, who is making the transition, or at least highly considering making the transition back to here in Jamaica. And with us, we have Yolanda Murphy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So can I call you Throp?
You can call me Throp.
Okay,
no
Throp.
problem. No problem. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show here today.
To be here.
And we only met yesterday, but we've been talking for a couple of days. And I think the story that you have is incredibly interesting. And also, I think a lot of people would find a lot of value in the process of your consideration of moving here to Jamaica. And if you would just please give us a brief background on who you are and your connection and affiliation with the great island of Jamaica.
Sure. So Throp, my name is Yolanda, as you said, Murphy, Caribbean American. I was born in South Florida, at a little city called Plantation, Florida, actually. Spent my school years there and many of my summers right here in Jamaica. My father was born and raised in Manchester, Mandeville. So got to spend my summers in different parts of the island throughout my life and gained an affinity for it then. But not the greatest appreciation, I think, as a child. I'm a 17-year communications executive, so I work in corporate America. I actually quit my job in July to see what's next for me on my journey, so I think that this is a discussion at the right time as I'm making decisions. As you mentioned, I've been heavily weighing what's next, where is next, where should I be, who should I be, with the goal in the end really becoming more of myself.
I see.
But so corporate America, communications, and my connection is my father. He passed away in 2014, and this is my first time back to the island since then, which has been about 7 years.
And you were born and raised in the States?
Born and raised in the States, yes.
In Florida?
So I was in South Florida from birth until about the early 90s, and then we moved to Central Florida. My mom moved us to Central Florida. I have three of us, two siblings from my mom and my father. In 2011, I moved my family from Central Florida to Maryland. And I've moved from Maryland to California and California to Virginia. And I'm back now in Maryland.
Okay, amazing. And then as a child, how often would you come to visit Jamaica?
I want to say every summer, but it might have been every other summer. And then we took a brief sabbatical. My parents divorced in the early 90s when my mom moved us to Central Florida and my dad moved back to Jamaica. As many probably know, that happens in those types of transitions and separations. There can be a few bumps in the road. So I didn't get to come back to Jamaica again until 1997. And then I came on my own a few times, 3 or 4 times between 97 and 2014. I came on my own.
And what about your siblings?
Same.
Yeah, okay.
My little sister, so I'm the middle child. I have a little sister, her name is Kimberly, and an older brother named Eric. I actually have an older brother from my dad. I have a lot of siblings, but that I'm really close to. My dad's oldest, his name is Patrick. He was born and raised here as well. He lives in New York now, and so he's always my consultant when I'm coming back to Jamaica. He's always the one checking in on us now that my dad is gone. But anytime I come, my little sister usually comes with me. This is probably the first time that I've come without her.
And then how did you, if you could walk us through like the process of even your consideration of like, when did you think like, hey, maybe I want to move to Jamaica, or this is something that's in my heart that I want to do? Like, has it always been there, or is that something new?
No, it's Maybe it has always been there, but I did not understand what it was.
I see.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mentioned early in the introduction that my dad passed away in 2014, September 26th to be precise. And if you don't mind, I'll tell a quick recap of
Sure,
that.
please.
I mentioned I'm in corporate America, and many who are familiar with it, it's usually high intensity, always go, 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 hustle and bustle. I'm in the DC metro area, so if you just think about that culturally, for those who are familiar with the District of Columbia area in the United States, it's fast-paced. Maybe not as fast-paced as New York, right? But it's pretty go, go, go 24/7. I had fallen into that. My son at the time was in high school playing football at a Catholic school. It was a Friday evening. My daughter was young. My hands were full. I had finished work, trying to get to his game, not be late, have my phone. My father was here in Jamaica, and he would call often. This particular time he was calling. We weren't on the best of terms. He hadn't been doing well health-wise, and he wasn't taking the proper advice and the proper care of himself. So as his daughter, we were kind of going back and forth.
I see.
And I felt like in that moment, I can't do this right now. I'm too busy. I have so much going on. I'll just have to call him in the morning. I don't want to hear what he has to say, what he's not doing, what he should be doing. I just can't do this right now. I'll call him back tomorrow. I didn't get to make that call.
Wow.
So I got the call in the morning. And even when I got the call, because they called me from his phone, I thought it was him. So I answered it with a particular attitude, right?
Wow.
And they say, your dad is dead.
Wow.
He died that night, hours later. So I went back and I listened to the voicemail that he had left for me, which I hadn't listened to the night before. And he wasn't in distress. He was fine. He sounded fine. He was calling to hear my voice and his grandchildren's voice is what his voicemail said. But it started with him saying to me, hey, honey, I know you're busy, but don't be too busy. And if I could get that tattooed right now, I would do that. Because that for me has been something that from that moment, from September 26, 2014, I knew I wasn't doing something right in my life. Wow. I wasn't prioritizing the things that truly mattered the most. And I mean, my kids mattered in that moment. They did. My son's football game mattered in that moment. So, I mean, I think bigger than that my dad is like, don't get so caught up in the rat race that you forget to appreciate life.
Right.
And that's what my trips to Jamaica and my connection to Jamaica have come to mean. And that's why I want to see Jamaica thrive. I want to see Jamaica sustain. I want to see it grow. I want to see it recognized for the global pillar that it is for culture and other things. And last year I turned 40. Yes, I'm 40. Don't tell nobody.
You don't look it. Trust me.
And I went to Indonesia, and I asked, and Indonesia is a very spiritual country, very similar to Jamaica. And I asked of that trip to give me clarity and guidance on what's next for me. What should I be doing? What is my purpose? And there are things that I'm passionate about, and one of the biggest things is giving back. And what I got wasn't what I expected. You ever make a plan and you're like, okay, give me the clarity and tell me what I'm supposed to be doing, but this is how I want to do it, right? This is how I want to do it. So just make this work, make this happen. And that's not what happened. My world got turned upside down for the next 18 months between COVID and social injustice and some personal things, in my personal life, and then even professionally. Everything was just chaotic all at once. And in July, I just heard a voice say, stop. Mm-hmm. And I stopped everything, quit my job, and I came to Jamaica in August.
Wow.
So I know that's a long way around it, but for me, that's what's the driving force inside of me that keeps bringing me back to Jamaica. They said, this is your center. This is where you belong. This is you're supposed to be a part of this, whatever this is. And I'm trying to figure that out now.
So that's a lot to unwrap. I mean, and there's so many aspects of your story that I can relate to. My father's 80 years old, and we do have healthy discussions, if you will, about his health and decisions relating to his health. And I know exactly what that feels like. And I try to be mindful. I try to be patient as possible. But what you're saying is resonating with me because we also are in a family business together as well. Even though me and my brothers are running the business at this point, it's still can be a situation where, and I think we all get caught up in this, like we just get caught up in life, right? And we kind of forget to slow down a little bit and appreciate the people who are around us and the ones who helped us to get to where we are. And listening to your story, I try to be mindful of that. I will, moving forward, try to be mindful of that. And I try to be conscious of that even now, as just, not wanting to put myself in a position, even with my mom as well. My mom is not as old, but still we have, we have healthy discussions as it relates to health in the future and things of that nature. And I do hope people listen to your story and realize that there is more important things than try to climb that corporate ladder and just kind of being laser focused and just, your happiness and the happiness of the people around you. So, I really, really appreciate you sharing that story.
Your parents are living that's a beautiful life for the age that they're at. My dad was 64 when he passed,
wow.
which was just too young. But the point that you raised is a good one. When my dad said, don't be too busy, it wasn't about that phone call. I wasn't coming as often as I should have. I wasn't calling as often as I should have. And for different reasons, but it was just life. So I hope that my story, to your point, can allow people to answer the phone when that caller ID comes that says mom or dad.
Right. Yeah. And like I was telling you in our conversation yesterday, it's just my aunt always says, and she posts on Facebook, if you still have mom and dad come up on caller ID, count your blessings. And I don't take that for granted because she doesn't have any of her parents right now.
Right.
And so as frustrating as some of our relationships with our parents can be, we do have to appreciate them while they're here and while we can. How long have you been here on this trip?
We arrived on the 28th of August.
Okay. So a few days. How has it been coming back?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Very different than what I expected. I had a lot of anxiety. For a few reasons. This is the second hotel on Jamaica's island that I have stepped foot on in my entire life. The first one is the one we're staying in.
Wow.
So I've never had to look for a hotel or stay at a resort or organize transportation from the airport. My dad would always pick us up. We always stayed at his house. I always slept in his bed. Those types of things. I didn't have to worry about where groceries are coming from, what I'm eating for dinner, what my sister is eating. And I had to worry about all of that. So I brought all of my kids, or the whole family is here. And I had to do that. So I had a lot of anxiety building up to come. And when we reached, I felt like I became my father almost. Like I started to do things. I wasn't driving, but I had organized everything, got in contact with the right people that were true Jamaican friends who shall not be named right now,
okay,
but are very close to us, that really listened to my story and what I was trying to achieve and didn't just send me to an all-inclusive resort and say, enjoy yourself. That really helped create the experience for my kids and myself that I was looking for in this trip, where we can feel like we're home, not just coming to tour. It's been beyond my wildest dreams. I expected to be sad. I'd, really expected to be in my feelings for some time, and it's been beautiful. It has been emotional, but in a good way. It's been inspirational. It's been meaningful for my kids. It's been re-energizing for me.
And so, in being here now on the ground, like what are you thinking in terms of the future? You don't? Oh, really? Okay.
I don't want to leave.
Wow.
And I have felt that way in the past as a child, just because Jamaica was fun. I recognize that there is a fair share of ignorance that I have, never having lived on the island. So I'm not blind to coming to visit is very different than living here. I understand that there's a lot left that I would have to learn, and I'm open to learn. But when I got here and got settled, I was like, I don't want to leave. How do I fix that? I want to be a part of what's going on here. I want I want my kids to be a part of what's going on. I want their kids to be a part of what's going on here.
I see.
And that's what's been kind of brewing in my belly and in my mind for the past 4 days.
I don't know if this is a good question or not, but can you describe, if you can, the feeling or the difference in the feeling that you have here than you have in the States?
Oh, yes. I can be me.
Okay, I see.
I mean, that really is what it boils down to. And it does not feel out of place or displaced. I mean, I know I'm not Jamaican. I'm Caribbean American. I identify as Jamaican American, or, because I was born in the States. My dad was born and raised here. My mom born and raised in the States. So I understand that I'm not Jamaican.
No,
but
you are.
As a Black woman with Caribbean roots, I feel like all parts of those parts of me can come to life and can be experienced, and I can enjoy, and they don't have to be in a box. And that feels freeing and liberating, which is very different than the experience in the States. I think it's a cultural thing that the U.S. is working through a huge part of social injustice right now.
Right.
When you think about the Black experience, but when you even break down furthermore the Black experience of a woman, when you add those intersections, the disparagement and those experiences are very different in corporate, in society, and it's fact based. So there are studies that talk about the pay gap, that talk about the microaggressions, that talk about hypervisibility and invisibility of the Black woman. And so it's all of these things that you're seeing at a heightened level, and we experience at a heightened level now, where Black women oftentimes can feel like they're walking on eggshells. You don't see us represented, in many places there. So when you come here and you see the representation, and you can connect with the culture, and you can be a part of that culture, there's nothing more liberating than that. There's nothing more freeing. There's nothing more joyful than coming somewhere and saying, I can be, I can be who I was intended to be here, and that add value to that community. So that being Jamaica. So that's what it's been for me. And that's why I'm excited to see what's next.
And I guess with your career in the States, I can only imagine what it must have been like for you to get to the executive level in corporate America as a Black woman, but also as somebody who is of Caribbean, who's of Jamaican descent as well, because I've had that experience of being Black American, but my father is Jamaican, and I was raised with Jamaican values. And certainly there were just some differences, cultural differences. And I haven't spent that much time in corporate America, to be honest, only as an internship in a finance company. But it's still there, and I wouldn't say I had a big problem relating to the traditional, if you will, black experience. But it's different when you are coming from a Jamaican household. And when I look back at my dad and how he was raised and the stories that he told me, like, he didn't know racism in Jamaica. My dad was born in 1942. And so you got to think about it. It's a different mindset. Mm-hmm. He had Black teachers, Black leaders. That was just part of representation, as you mentioned, growing up. And it wasn't until he moved to England at 19 that he really understood what racism really was. And I'm not saying that you had experienced racism. Maybe you have. I don't know. But it definitely is a different experience being raised by a parent who wasn't. If my dad was raised in 1942 or born in 1942 in America, he'd be a very different father to me for sure.
Absolutely. And yes, I mean, it's hard to be Black in the States and not have it. I mean, anywhere in the world and not have experienced racism. So throughout my whole life, which again, different episode, right? Mm-hmm. But what you made me think of is, and I'm still unpacking why I am the way I am. My mother was born and raised in the States. She was a teacher in the States. And when we would come back from Jamaica with a little bit of an accent, she would literally drive it out of us for us to go back to speaking proper English. And I could never understand why. Mm-hmm. A part of me believes it's because she wanted to do our best to make sure we fit in and did not stand out. That we could assimilate into what the superior culture was. And at that, I mean, Jamaica and, the Caribbean now is popular now in the States, but it has not always been that way. When I was in elementary school and even in middle school, we would get teased for being from Jamaica or listening to reggae or any of those things, and ask stupid questions about, things, cultures and traditions that people had certain impressions of. So there was always that conflict. I told you when we talked, I think we both shared the same thing. I don't know how my mom ended up marrying my dad.
Because, I know the feeling.
Right. So she, 100% American and my dad 100% Jamaican, and their views just completely would collide. Yeah, so she really, I felt like, did not want us to identify as Jamaican. So growing, again, putting everything in a box and not being able to be your true self. And then your dad saying, you're Jamaican, these are Jamaican values, these are Jamaican traditions. And you go to your grandparents' house, his parents' house, and you're learning these things, but you can't bring them back to your American side. And you can't bring the American side over to the Jamaican side. And when you go through your life like that, and that's the personal side. And then, like you said, in corporate America, there is a standard for what professionalism is, and what corporate America looks like and what it feels like, and all these things. It's down to the simplest things, such as our hair. My hair is locked. A lot of Black women now, hair is natural. You're seeing legislation that has to come up now that it's allowing our hair to not be considered a disruption for the way it grows out of our head.
Oh my gosh.
That's a problem.
That's ridiculous.
If you think about the Crown Act, which I believe California and New York enacted it first, and it really was driven by a lot of school-age children that were being expelled and suspended for their hair being a disruption, for not being tamed or kept to somebody else's standard. But you have to impose a law that says the way my hair grows from my head should be acceptable. I mean, think about that.
It's incredible. Absolutely unbelievable.
That's hair. Let's not talk about anything else.
Right.
That's just your hair. So again, that just goes back to the difference it feels to come here and be able to free yourself of all of that and just really connect with who you are.
And I know this is early days at this point in your whole process and the journey that you're on, but like right now, as of today, like how would you see yourself making more of a footprint or having more of a footprint here in Jamaica?
Well, for starters, I'm trying to understand what role I play in building Jamaica and, getting Jamaica the notoriety that it needs, and being embedded as a part of the community, even from afar. And there's an organization that I found last year, Cornerstone Jamaica, doing some amazing things in partnership with Jamaica, primarily in Westmoreland, that I have been following, mostly, and contributing where I can, where my busy schedule would allow me to contribute. And I want to be able to lean into that more. It's a phenomenal organization, excellent connections, committed to the country of Jamaica and all of its people. And I think I have to continue to educate myself, but I want to be able to do that actively. So how do I do that in a way that's also allowing me to contribute to the community? So that's where I'm starting, is how do I educate myself? How do I best understand where the opportunities are, where I might be the best fit? That's the phase I feel like I'm in now.
I see.
And then from there, it would be, what does the transition look like? Is it full-time? Is there a possibility that I could live in Jamaica full-time? Or is it a hybrid situation where I can, what do they say in the States, snowbird, where, I can be here 6 months out of the year and go back and forth. So right now I'm just playing those scenarios in my head as I educate myself to see what makes the most sense and what is the most feasible for me and my family.
I see. And I can tell you a lot of people start out that way, where they spend a portion of the year here in Jamaica, snowbird, and back in the States. And even now we have guests who stay here. They'll be here like 3 months and they'll stay at the hotel. And with COVID, a lot of them, and they've been coming here for years. And now a lot of them are moving into retirement ages. And so many of our guests have come down, even from this winter, they came down and they started looking at property. And I've been calling my real estate agent just ringing off the hook, because we had so many people who are interested, and there are people who keep coming back to Jamaica, and most of them have no bloodline affiliation with Jamaica, but they love Negril, they love Jamaica, and they want to make this their retirement. I think the pandemic has really pushed people to start thinking this way. But somebody like yourself, who's really in the height of their career and still working. And it is 2021. I'm not sure exactly what you do, but I've had guests on the show who've been able to have work here and live here at the same time. And definitely consider that. I'm sure that's in your head one way or another.
Absolutely. I'm thinking about it. So again, I'm in communications. I'm a communications executive. In transition now in terms of what I'm going to do next. But a lot of travel was in my past job, and I would anticipate would be in future jobs, with my bosses and offices being all around the United States.
Hey everyone, I hope you are enjoying my conversation with Yolanda thus far and are able to abstract some insight from her story. As you've heard, she's in the very beginning stages of making some sort of transition to Jamaica. And it just goes to show you that no two journeys are the same, whether making your way to Jamaica or making your way through life in general. I certainly appreciate Yolanda opening up to us about her reasonings and pull for coming back to Jamaica. Now in part 2, we're actually going to be flipping the conversation, and Yolanda is going to be asking me some questions about my transition to Jamaica and my experience being here for over 15 years, which is really hard to believe. I figured she would have some questions that many people considering moving to Jamaica might have, and I'm sure there will be some value that can be extracted from this for the viewers who are watching this now. Again, I do hope that you've enjoyed this first part of our conversation. Please join us in part 2, where essentially Yolanda is going to be interviewing me. Thank you again for watching, and I will see you over in part 2. Later.